I am Emma, 32 years old, and I never thought I would see my father again after he walked out on us when I was 12. So you can imagine my shock when he showed up at my doorstep with my spoiled sister Amber, demanding a cut of my six-figure software engineer salary. The mixture of anger and confusion I felt in that moment was overwhelming. I had built my life from nothing, and now they wanted to cash in on my success. If you are watching this video, drop a comment letting me know where you are from, and hit subscribe to hear the full story of how I handled this family betrayal and finally stood up for myself after years of abandonment. Growing up in a small town in Oregon, my childhood was relatively normal until I turned 12. My father, Robert, was a salesman with an unreliable income, and my mother, Diana, worked as a nurse at the local hospital. My sister Amber was 4 years younger than me, and we were close as children, often playing together in our modest backyard while our parents were working. Everything changed when my parents divorced. I was 12, and Amber was 8. The divorce itself was bitter and filled with arguments I could hear through my bedroom walls at night. I would often find Amber hiding in my room, covering her ears and crying. I would comfort her, telling her everything would be okay, even though I was terrified myself. After the divorce was finalized, my father, Robert, simply vanished from my life. The child support payments were irregular at best and eventually stopped altogether. He would make grand promises about weekend visits and phone calls that never materialized. Within a year, he had moved to Nevada with his new girlfriend, leaving us behind without so much as a proper goodbye. My mother was left to raise 2 daughters on her nursing salary alone. She took on double shifts, working nights and weekends just to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. I still remember the exhaustion in her eyes when she would come home from a 16-hour shift, only to start making dinner for us before collapsing into bed for a few hours. At the age of 12, I quickly learned to take on responsibilities beyond my years. While other kids my age were enjoying after-school activities, I was cooking meals, doing laundry, and helping Amber with her homework. By 14, I was babysitting for neighbors to bring in extra money for household expenses. My childhood disappeared under the weight of adult responsibilities. What hurt the most was seeing the stark difference in how my father treated Amber and me. While he had essentially erased me from his life, he maintained sporadic contact with Amber. He would call her on her birthday or send her small gifts during holidays, completely ignoring my existence. I would watch Amber excitedly open presents from our father, while I received nothing, not even a card. This differential treatment had a profound effect on both of us. For me, it created a deep wound of abandonment and unworthiness that I struggled to understand. Why was I not good enough for my own father to love me? For Amber, it created a sense of entitlement and favoritism that would eventually transform her from the sweet little sister I had protected into someone I barely recognized. There was one incident that crystallized my relationship with my father forever. On my 16th birthday, he had called the week before, promising to drive up from Nevada to take me out for a special dinner. My mother was skeptical, but I was so desperate for his approval that I spent hours getting ready, wearing my nicest outfit, and even borrowing some of my mother's makeup. I waited by the window all evening, watching cars drive by, my heart leaping each time one slowed near our house. By 9 p.m., my mother gently suggested we have some cake she had baked. By midnight, I had accepted he wasn't coming. No call, no explanation, nothing. The next day, I threw away the carefully written thank you card I had made him and decided that I would never again put my happiness in his unreliable hands. From that day forward, I channeled all my hurt and disappointment into determination. If my father didn't think I was worth his time, I would prove my worth through achievement and success. I threw myself into academics, staying up late to maintain perfect grades while still helping at home. My mother noticed this change and worried about me pushing myself too hard, but she also understood my need to forge my own path. Amber, meanwhile, was growing increasingly entitled. By the time she was 14, she was demanding designer clothes we couldn't afford and throwing tantrums when my mother explained our financial limitations. I tried to talk to her about appreciating what we had, but the sporadic attention from our father had convinced her she deserved more, better, and everything she wanted. As high school progressed, our lives continued to diverge. I was building independence and resilience, while Amber was building expectations and demands. Our paths were set on trajectories that would eventually collide in ways I could never have imagined. By the time I reached my senior year of high school, I had developed a singular focus on education as my ticket to a better life. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Patterson, took a special interest in my situation after noticing I was always the first to arrive at school and the last to leave the library each day. "Emma, have you ever considered computer science?" she asked one afternoon as I was researching scholarship opportunities in the Career Center. "You have an analytical mind, and your math scores are exceptional. Tech companies are desperate for female engineers." That conversation changed my life trajectory. Mrs. Patterson helped me navigate the complex world of college applications, scholarship essays, and financial aid forms. With her guidance, I applied to several state universities with strong computer science programs. When the acceptance letter from State University arrived with a partial merit scholarship, I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in years. The scholarship would cover about half of my tuition, but the remaining costs and living expenses were still daunting. I applied for every additional scholarship I could find, wrote countless essays, and secured several small awards that helped close the gap. My mother cried when I showed her the financial aid package I had assembled. "You have worked so hard, Emma. I am so proud of you," she said, hugging me tightly. "I wish I could help more with the costs." "You have helped in every way that matters, Mom," I told her, meaning every word. Her sacrifice and example had taught me more than any classroom ever could. College life was a shock to my system. I moved into a tiny apartment with 3 roommates to save on housing costs. Our place was so small that we had to create a schedule for using the single desk in the common area. I worked 20 hours a week at the campus coffee shop, another 15 hours, as a teaching assistant for introductory computer courses, and still maintained a full course load. My diet consisted primarily of ramen noodles, discount groceries approaching their expiration date, and free food from campus events. I became an expert at stretching every dollar, often skipping meals when funds ran low at the end of the month. Despite these hardships, I maintained a 3.9 GPA and began building a portfolio of coding projects that would later prove invaluable. Meanwhile, my mother's health began to decline. Years of working double shifts had taken their toll, and she was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome and early signs of heart problems. I would call her daily worried sick about her working herself to death, but she always insisted she was fine and redirected the conversation to my studies. Around my sophomore year, I learned through my mother that my father had suddenly reappeared in Amber's life in a significant way. Amber had been accepted to an expensive private college, and to my shock, our father had offered to pay her full tuition. The same man who had contributed nothing to my education and barely acknowledged my existence was now playing the role of generous provider for my sister. While I was working multiple jobs and living on ramen, Amber was posting photos on social media from sorority parties, shopping sprees, and spring break trips to Cancun. She rarely called home, and when she did, the conversations were brief and centered entirely around her social life and the latest gifts our father had sent her. The contrast in our college experiences couldn't have been more stark, but I refused to let bitterness consume me. Instead, I channeled that energy into working even harder. During my junior year, I was fortunate to meet Professor Williams, who recognized my potential and became a crucial mentor. She pushed me beyond what I thought I was capable of and connected me with industry contacts. "You have a rare combination of technical skill and perseverance, Emma," she told me after reviewing my project for her advanced algorithms class. "Those qualities will take you far in this industry." Through Professor Williams, I secured an internship at a Seattle-based tech startup the summer before my senior year. The internship paid well enough that I could send some money home to my mother. And more importantly, it opened doors I never knew existed. For the first time, I saw a clear path to the financial security I had been working toward. The day of my graduation was one of the proudest moments of my life. My mother took her first day off in years to attend, looking thinner and more tired than I remembered, but beaming with pride as I crossed the stage. Amber was notably absent, having chosen to go on a weekend trip with friends instead. My father, of course, wasn't there either. But standing in my cap and gown diploma in hand, I realized I didn't need their approval anymore. I had proven my worth to the only person who mattered, myself. After graduation, I accepted a full-time position at the Seattle startup where I had interned. The salary was modest by industry standards, but it represented wealth beyond anything I had known growing up. For the first time in my life, I could buy groceries without checking prices and could afford an apartment without roommates, though I opted for a small studio to maximize my savings. The startup environment was demanding but exhilarating. I typically worked 12-hour days diving deep into code and learning everything I could about software architecture. My colleagues were brilliant and driven, creating an atmosphere where innovation was expected and mediocrity was not tolerated. Within my first year, I had distinguished myself by redesigning a critical component of our main product, reducing load times by 60%. This caught the attention of senior management, and I was given increasing responsibility on high-profile projects. By the end of my second year, I was promoted to senior developer, an unusually rapid advancement that generated some resentment among longer-tenured colleagues. Just as my career was taking off, my personal life was struck by devastating news. My mother, who had been experiencing increasing health problems, was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. The diagnosis was a brutal reminder of how precarious life could be. Without hesitation, I began flying back to Oregon every other weekend to accompany her to treatments and help with household tasks. The cost of flights, medical expenses not covered by insurance, and hiring help for when I couldn't be there quickly drained my savings, but I never once regretted the decision. This was the woman who had sacrificed everything for me, and now it was my turn to support her. During one of these visits home, my mother mentioned that Amber had dropped out of college despite our father paying her tuition. She says college is too stressful and she wants to find herself, my mother explained with a sigh. Your father bought her a car as a consolation prize. I bit my tongue to avoid saying what I really thought about this situation. My sister had been handed every advantage and squandered it while I had fought for every opportunity. But dwelling on the unfairness would not help my mother's recovery, so I focused instead on making her laugh and keeping her spirits up during the grueling chemotherapy sessions. 6 months into my mother's treatment, an unexpected opportunity arose. A major tech company based in Seattle had taken notice of our startup's innovations, particularly the components I had developed. Their head of talent recruitment contacted me directly to discuss a position as lead software engineer for a new project they were launching. The interview process was rigorous, involving multiple rounds of technical assessments and personality evaluations. Throughout it all, I was distracted by concern for my mother and exhausted from the constant travel. When they called with an offer, I was sitting in the hospital waiting room during one of my mother's treatments. The compensation package they presented was staggering. The base salary was 3 times what I was currently making, with substantial stock options, comprehensive benefits, and a signing bonus that could cover a year of my mother's medical expenses. I accepted on the spot, tears streaming down my face at the realization that I could now provide my mother with the best care available. My first act after signing the contract was to move my mother to Seattle. I found an apartment near mine with good accessibility features and arranged for the best oncologists in the city to take over her care. Having her close meant I could check on her daily while still maintaining my demanding work schedule. The new position challenged me in ways I had never imagined. I was leading a team of 15 developers, many older and more experienced than myself. There were days when imposter syndrome threatened to overwhelm me, moments when I questioned whether I belonged in such a prestigious role. But the thought of my mother fighting cancer with the same determination I had seen throughout my childhood gave me strength to push through the self-doubt. Within 2 years, our team had developed a groundbreaking software platform that revolutionized how businesses manage cloud resources. The project received industry accolades and was featured in major tech publications. My name began to appear in articles about rising stars in the tech world, and recruitment offers from competing companies flooded my inbox. As my professional reputation grew, so did my financial stability. I methodically ticked off financial milestones that once seemed impossible. First, I paid off my substantial student loans, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders as I made the final payment. Next, I purchased a modest but modern condo in a nice area of Seattle, the first property anyone in my immediate family had ever owned. Despite my growing wealth, I maintained relatively modest spending habits. My most significant expenses were related to my mother's care and establishing a solid retirement fund for her so she would never have to worry about finances again. I also built a diversified investment portfolio determined to create generational wealth that would break the cycle of financial instability I had grown up with. My one indulgence was a weekly dinner with Jennifer, the company's CEO, who had taken me under her wing. Despite the significant gap in our positions, we had formed a genuine friendship based on shared values and similar backgrounds. Jennifer had also come from humble beginnings and understood the hunger for success that drove me. The hardest part about making it, she told me during one of our dinners, is managing the expectations of those who didn't support your journey, but suddenly want to share in your success. Those words would prove prophetic sooner than I could have imagined. In the spring of that year, our company was featured in a local business magazine's 30 Under 30 issue. The article included a profile of me mentioning my role in developing our flagship product and hinting at my substantial six-figure compensation package. There was also a photo of me in our sleek office space, and a brief mention of my background as a scholarship student who had worked her way through college. I thought nothing of the article at the time, pleased for the company recognition, but not particularly concerned about the personal exposure. I had no idea that this seemingly innocuous piece would find its way to my estranged father, and set in motion a chain of events that would force me to confront the family dynamics I had tried so hard to leave behind. Over the years, my contact with Amber had dwindled to occasional holiday texts and birthday acknowledgments. I would see glimpses of her life through social media. From what my mother told me, Amber had bounced between several jobs after dropping out of college, never staying anywhere longer than a few months. My father had apparently continued to support her, financially enabling a lifestyle far beyond what she earned through her sporadic employment. It was about 3 weeks after the magazine article was published that I received an unexpected text from Amber. "Hey sis, long time no talk. I am going to be in Seattle next weekend. Coffee catch up." The message was so casual, as if we had maintained a close relationship all these years. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but curiosity and a lingering sense of familial obligation compelled me to agree. We arranged to meet at a cafe near Pike Place Market that Saturday. When Amber arrived, I barely recognized her. Her previously natural look had been replaced with obvious cosmetic enhancements, designer clothes, and an air of practiced sophistication that seemed out of place with what I knew of her actual circumstances. "Emma, you look so professional," she said, giving me a quick hug before sitting down. There was an unmistakable note of surprise in her voice, as if she had expected me to look downtrodden despite my career success. Our conversation started with surface-level pleasantries, Amber sharing gossip about people from our hometown that I barely remembered. I noticed she carefully avoided any mention of our father until we were about halfway through our coffees. "So, I saw that article about you," she said, casually stirring her latte. "Lead software engineer, huh? That must pay pretty well." "I have been fortunate," I replied noncommittally, already sensing where this might be heading. "I bet you have this amazing apartment and everything," she continued, her eyes calculating. "Must be nice not having to worry about money." "I worked very hard to get where I am," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "It didn't happen overnight." Amber waved her hand dismissively. "Yeah, but now you have arrived, right? You know what they say about family helping family." There it was, the real purpose behind this sudden reconnection. I carefully steered the conversation to other topics, asking about her current job, which she described vaguely as in transition. Throughout the remainder of our meeting, she dropped hints about her financial struggles, mentioning her maxed out credit cards and the high cost of living. We parted with a promise to stay in touch that I suspected neither of us intended to keep. As I walked home, I couldn't shake the feeling that this sudden appearance was not Amber's idea alone. My suspicions were confirmed when my mother called the next day. "Your father has been asking a lot of questions about your job," she said, concern evident in her voice. "He saw the article and has been telling everyone about his successful daughter in tech. He has no right to claim any connection to my success," I said, feeling the old anger resurface. "I know, sweetie, I just wanted you to be aware. He has been struggling financially since his real estate investments went bad last year. After that conversation, Amber's social media took a surprising turn. She began posting photos of expensive restaurants, new clothes, and even a weekend spa getaway, tagging them with captions like "so grateful for my successful sister" and "blessed to have family that provides." I was bewildered as I had given her nothing beyond paying for our coffee. Friends began messaging me asking if I had reconciled with my sister after seeing her posts. It became clear that Amber was creating a false narrative about our relationship and my supposed financial support. When I confronted her via text, she brushed it off as just social media stuff and asked if I could loan her $3,000 for car repairs. I declined firmly but politely, explaining that I had significant financial commitments, including my mother's medical care. Her response was a series of increasingly manipulative messages, alternating between guilt trips about family obligation and flattery about my success. Then came the disturbing late-night text from an unknown number: "Daughters should support their fathers. We need to talk about your responsibility to family." I knew immediately it was from my father, though we hadn't spoken in over 15 years. The next day, I discussed the situation with my friend Rachel over lunch at our usual spot near the office. "This is financial harassment," Rachel said firmly after I showed her the messages. "You don't owe them anything, Emma. They contributed nothing to your success." I know that logically, I sighed. But there is still this irrational guilt, like maybe I should help because we are blood related. "Blood doesn't entitle them to your hard-earned money," Rachel countered. "Would you give thousands of dollars to a stranger who treated you the way your father has?" She was right, of course. I decided to limit the information I shared with Amber and block the unknown number I suspected belonged to my father. I hoped that would be the end of it, but a small voice inside warned me this was just the beginning. The Saturday morning that would change everything started like any other. I woke early, made my pour-over coffee, and settled on my balcony with the latest book on software architecture. These quiet weekend mornings were precious to me, a small luxury after years of working weekends to make ends meet. My peaceful ritual was shattered by the insistent ringing of my doorbell, followed by loud knocking. Puzzled, I checked the time. It was barely 9 a.m., and I wasn't expecting any deliveries or visitors. When I opened the door, I felt as though I had been plunged into ice water. Standing in my hallway were two people I had never expected to see at my home. My father, Robert, looking older, but with the same calculating eyes I remembered, and beside him, Amber, wearing an expression that mixed entitlement with feigned affection. "Surprise!" Amber exclaimed with artificial brightness. "We thought we would drop by and see your place." I stood frozen in the doorway, struggling to process this invasion of my personal space. How had they even found my address? "Emma," my father said, stepping forward as if to embrace me. I instinctively stepped back. "Is that any way to greet your father? We have not seen each other in years." Finding my voice at last, I asked, "How did you get my address?" "Amber looked it up in public records," he said dismissively, already peering past me into my condo. "Are you going to invite us in?" "It is chilly out here." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. They entered as if they had every right to be there, immediately scanning my living space with appraising eyes. "Nice place," my father commented, running his hand along my granite kitchen counter. "Must have cost a pretty penny." "Very minimalist," Amber added, sounding disappointed by the lack of ostentatious luxury. My condo was comfortable, but modestly furnished, my money going toward investments rather than showcasing wealth. An uncomfortable silence followed as I offered them seats in my living room. I did not offer refreshments, hoping this unexpected visit would be brief. "So," my father began after settling into my sofa, "we saw that article about you. Lead software engineer at 32. Your old man is proud." The claim of pride from a man who had shown no interest in my life for 2 decades made anger flare within me, but I kept my expression neutral. "What brings you to Seattle?" I asked, deliberately ignoring his comment. "Can't a father visit his successful daughter?" He replied with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "We have a lot of catching up to do." For 20 minutes, the conversation remained superficial, with my father asking questions about my job that revealed he knew nothing about what I actually did. Amber occasionally interjected with comments about how amazing it must be to have financial security, each statement feeling like bait for a trap. Finally, my father shifted forward in his seat, his demeanor changing from falsely warm to businesslike. Emma, I will be straight with you. We are here because family needs to support family. What exactly does that mean? I asked, though I already knew. Well, your sister here has had some financial setbacks. He gestured to Amber, who immediately adopted a forlorn expression. Credit card debt about 30,000. Not her fault, of course. The economy, you know. I glanced at Amber's designer purse that probably cost more than a month of my rent and said nothing. And I have been looking to retire, my father continued. My real estate investments haven't performed as expected, and I thought, well, my successful daughter in tech could help her old man with a down payment on a retirement home in Arizona. The audacity was breathtaking. Let me understand, I said slowly. You abandoned us, contributed nothing to my education or career, and now you want me to give you money. Contributed nothing. My father's face flushed with anger. I raised you for 12 years. I invested in you by being your father. Now that investment should pay returns. Inside me, something that had been bending for years finally snapped. Investment. You think being a parent is an investment with financial returns? You left us with nothing. Mom worked herself sick to provide for us while you started a new life and forgot we existed. That is not true, Amber interjected. Dad always cared about us. He just had a different relationship with you. A non-existent relationship is not different, Amber, I replied. He chose not to be part of my life, and that was his right. But he does not get to reappear when I have money and claim entitlement to it. My father's face darkened. So that is how it is going to be. You get successful and forget where you came from. Forget your family obligations. Family obligations, I repeated incredulously. Like the obligation to pay child support, or to call your daughter on her birthday, or to show up when you promised to. Amber began to cry tears that seemed practiced and calculated. You are being so selfish. Emma, I am drowning in debt, and you are living in luxury. What kind of sister are you? The kind who put herself through college working 3 jobs, I replied steadily. The kind who sends money to Mom every month for her cancer treatments. The kind who built her own success without help from either of you. My father stood abruptly. I have a right to your money after all I did for you. Without me, you wouldn't even exist. You owe me. His shouting was so loud that my neighbor, Mrs. Castillo, knocked on my door to check if everything was okay. The interruption seemed to make my father realize he had lost control of the situation. This isn't over, he said in a lower but more threatening tone. Family takes care of family whether you like it or not. You will regret turning your back on us. Amber gathered her things, giving me a look of contempt through her manufactured tears. I always knew you were cold, Emma, but I never thought you would be this heartless. As they stormed out, my father turned back one last time. Don't think this ends here. We are entitled to a share of your success. One way or another, you will do right by your family. I closed the door behind them, leaned against it, and finally allowed myself to tremble with the rage and hurt I had contained during their visit. Their sense of entitlement to what I had worked so hard to build was staggering. But more than that, it was the realization that they saw me not as a person, but as a resource to be exploited. In that moment, I knew I would need to take decisive action to protect myself from the storm I sensed was coming. After my unwelcome visitors left, I collapsed onto my sofa, my entire body shaking with a mixture of anger and shock. When I finally managed to steady my breathing, I called my mother to tell her what had happened. Oh, Emma, she sighed, her voice heavy with concern. I was afraid something like this would happen. Robert called me last week asking for your address. I refused to give it to him, but I should have warned you he was trying to find you. It is not your fault, Mom, I assured her. But why now, after all these years? He lost his job 6 months ago, she revealed. And according to mutual friends, his wife left him around the same time. I think he sees you as his financial safety net. This information made the situation even more troubling. My father wasn't just looking for a one-time handout, he was potentially seeking long-term support. The thought made my skin crawl. Within an hour of my call to my mother, Rachel and Michael, my closest friends were at my door with takeout and supportive words. I recounted the confrontation in detail while they listened with growing outrage. "You need to document everything," Michael advised. He worked in corporate security and had a practical approach to threats. "Save any texts, emails, record dates, and times of visits. If this escalates, you will want a clear record." "You think it will escalate?" I asked, the knot in my stomach tightening. Rachel nodded grimly. "People who feel entitled to what is not theirs rarely give up easily, especially when they are desperate." Her prediction proved accurate. That evening, the messages began flooding in. First from Amber, ranging from tearful pleas to vicious accusations about my character and how I had abandoned my family. Then came emails from my father, each one more demanding than the last, with thinly veiled threats about making things public if I didn't do the right thing. Most disturbing was a social media post from Amber claiming I had promised to help her financially, and then cruelly withdrawn my support, leaving her homeless. It was completely fabricated, but the post garnered sympathetic comments and shares, including from people we had known in our hometown. The harassment soon extended beyond digital boundaries. 3 days after their visit, my father appeared in the lobby of my office building, telling the receptionist he needed to speak with his daughter about a family emergency. Fortunately, our security protocols required visitor verification, and I had already alerted our team that I was not accepting any unexpected family visits. Security escorted him out, but not before he created a scene loudly proclaiming that I was denying my own father during his time of need. Several colleagues witnessed the commotion, and though they were supportive when I briefly explained the situation, I felt humiliated and exposed. Jennifer, my boss and mentor, called me into her office afterward. "Emma, is everything okay?" That seemed intense. I hesitated, embarrassed to bring personal issues into my professional space. But Jennifer's concerned expression convinced me to share the basics of the situation. "This is harassment," she said firmly after listening. "And I want you to know the company has your back. We can arrange for additional security measures if needed, and if you need to work from home for a while, that can be accommodated." Her support meant everything to me. In the following days, I learned that my father had also attempted to contact several of my colleagues through LinkedIn, spinning tales about family medical emergencies and his desperate need to reach me. The company IT department worked quickly to enhance privacy settings on my professional profiles. With Michael's guidance, I consulted with an attorney who specialized in harassment cases. She listened carefully to my situation and recommended documenting everything while considering a restraining order if the behavior continued. "What gives me pause," I admitted during our consultation, "is that these are family members. Part of me still hesitates to take legal action against my own father and sister despite everything." "That is a common response," the attorney assured me. "Family relationships complicate these situations, but remember their behavior is not normal or acceptable regardless of blood ties." I left her office with a clearer understanding of my options, but still conflicted about how far I was willing to go. That evening, I spoke with my therapist in an emergency session, working through the complex emotions this situation had triggered. "The abandonment wounds from your childhood are being reactivated," she explained. "Your hesitation is understandable, but consider whether it stems from genuine compassion or from that wounded child still seeking approval." Her words resonated deeply. Was I hesitating because of lingering hope that my father would somehow transform into the parent I had needed? Was I still that 16-year-old girl waiting by the window? While I processed these difficult questions, the situation took an even more alarming turn. My bank called to alert me about an attempted access to my accounts. Someone had tried to reset my passwords using personal information that would be known to family members, such as my mother's maiden name and my childhood pet's name. This crossed a line from emotional manipulation into potential criminal territory. The bank's fraud department helped me establish enhanced security measures, but the incident left me deeply shaken. How far were they willing to go to get my money? Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that my father and Amber had been contacting extended family members and childhood friends, telling distorted versions of our confrontation that painted me as a cold-hearted daughter who had abandoned her struggling family after achieving success. Some believed their stories, sending me disappointed messages about how money had changed me. Others who knew me better reached out to check if I was okay, suspicious of the sudden narrative being circulated. The breaking point came when I discovered through the bank's investigation that the attempted account access had been traced back to my father's IP address. This wasn't just harassment anymore. It was attempted financial fraud. That evening, I sat in my living room staring at the restraining order paperwork my attorney had prepared. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on me. Taking legal action against family members felt like the final severing of ties, and admission that reconciliation was impossible. But as I recalled my father's entitled demands and Amber's manipulative tears, I realized something important. These people were not acting like family. Real family doesn't exploit, manipulate, or attempt to steal from one another. Real family supports growth and celebrates success, not demands to profit from it. With newfound clarity, I signed the paperwork and emailed it to my attorney. It was time to take back control and set boundaries that would protect the life I had worked so hard to build. The day I decided to confront my father and Amber on my terms marked a turning point in my life. After consulting with my attorney, I arranged for the meeting to take place at her office rather than mine. This was not just about legal protection, it was about reclaiming power in the relationship. I spent the week leading up to the meeting gathering documentation of every interaction, every message, and every attempt to access my financial information. My attorney helped me organize this evidence chronologically, creating a comprehensive record of the escalating harassment. When the day arrived, I dressed in my most professional attire, drawing strength from the external composure it helped me maintain. My attorney greeted me with a reassuring smile as I arrived 30 minutes early to review our strategy. "Remember," she advised, "stay focused on the facts. Emotional appeals are their territory, not yours." My father and Amber arrived precisely on time, their expressions shifting from confidence to wariness when they saw the formal setting. They had clearly expected a private meeting where they could employ their usual tactics without witnesses. "What is this?" my father demanded, eyeing my attorney with suspicion. "We are here to discuss family matters, not legal issues. When family matters involve attempted financial fraud and harassment, they become legal issues," my attorney replied calmly, gesturing for them to take seats across from us. I allowed my attorney to lead the initial discussion, explaining that this meeting had been called to address their recent behavior and establish clear boundaries going forward. Then she nodded to me, indicating it was time for me to speak. Taking a deep breath, I opened the folder containing printed copies of their messages, the security reports from my office building, and the bank's documentation of the attempted account access. For the past 3 weeks, I began, my voice steadier than I expected. "You have bombarded me with demands for money, shown up uninvited at my home and workplace, spread false information about me to family and friends, and even attempted to access my bank accounts without authorization." I pushed the evidence across the table. "All of this has been documented and verified. The bank's fraud department has traced the attempted account access directly to your IP address," I said, looking directly at my father. His face paled slightly, but he quickly recovered. "There must be some mistake. I would never do such a thing." "There is no mistake," I continued, maintaining eye contact despite the churning in my stomach. "What you both need to understand today is that your behavior stops now." I then delivered the speech I had rehearsed countless times, recounting specific instances of my father's absence throughout my life: the missed birthdays, the broken promises, and the complete lack of support during my educational and professional journey. "You walked away from any right to call yourself my father 20 years ago." I told him, my voice finally betraying some of the emotion I had been containing. "You don't get to reappear now and claim entitlement to the success I built without you." Turning to Amber, I continued, "And you have chosen to enable and participate in this harassment. The sister I protected and cared for as a child would never have done this." My father's face flushed with anger. "This is how you speak to your family after everything we have done for you." "What exactly have you done for me?" I asked quietly. "Name one thing, one sacrifice you have made for my well-being in the past 20 years." His silence was more satisfying than any response could have been. My attorney then outlined the legal consequences they would face if the harassment continued. She explained the restraining order I was prepared to file and the potential criminal charges related to the attempted financial fraud. However, she added, my client is willing to resolve this situation without pursuing these legal remedies provided certain conditions are met. I took over again, laying out my terms. First, all contact from both of you stops immediately unless it goes through my attorney. Second, you retract the false statements you have made to family members and on social media. Third, I paused, meeting each of their eyes in turn. I am willing to pay for therapy for both of you. Not cash, not debt payment, not a house down payment. Professional help that you clearly need. My father's response was predictable. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. This is outrageous. You can't threaten your own family like this. Amber, however, remained seated, her expression unreadable. For the first time since this ordeal began, she seemed to be actually processing the reality of the situation. Dad, she said quietly, maybe we should listen. His head whipped toward her. What did you say? This has gone too far. She continued, not meeting his eyes. The bank account thing, I did not know about that. That is illegal. It was the first crack in their united front, a moment of truth I had not anticipated. My father looked at Amber with a mixture of shock and betrayal before turning back to me. You have turned my own daughter against me, he accused. Fine, keep your money. But know this, you will regret turning your back on family when you need us someday. With that final attempt at manipulation, he stormed out of the room. Amber remained seated, looking lost and suddenly much younger than her years. After a moment of silence, she spoke in a small voice. He told me you owed us, that families share wealth, that it was only fair after everything. And you believed him. I said, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. She nodded slowly. He makes everything sound so reasonable, and it is easier to believe I deserve things than to work for them like you did. This unexpected moment of self-awareness caught me off guard. I had prepared for continued hostility, not vulnerability. Amber, I am willing to have a relationship with you, I said carefully, but not one based on financial expectations or manipulation. The therapy offer stands for you separately from Dad. She looked up, tears in her eyes that seemed genuine for the first time. I would like that. I don't like who I have become. We ended the meeting with my attorney providing Amber with information about therapists specializing in family dynamics and codependency. As she left considerably more subdued than when she had arrived, I felt the first glimmer of hope that at least one relationship might eventually be salvaged from this mess. True to my expectations, my father followed through on his threat of a restraining order becoming necessary. With evidence in hand, the court granted a temporary order prohibiting him from contacting me or coming near my home or workplace. It was a painful step to take, but one that brought immediate relief from the constant anxiety I had been experiencing. Amber surprisingly kept her word about seeking therapy. Our communication remained minimal, at first limited to brief text messages confirming her attendance at sessions. But gradually, over the following months, something resembling a genuine relationship began to take shape. My own healing journey continued in parallel. The confrontation had reopened childhood wounds of abandonment and unworthiness that required professional help to process. My therapist specialized in trauma work, helping me understand how these early experiences had shaped my relationships and self-perception. You have spent your life proving your worth through achievement, she observed during one session. What would it feel like to believe you have inherent worth regardless of what you accomplish? It was a concept so foreign, it initially made me uncomfortable. My identity had been built around self-sufficiency and success as protection against rejection. Learning to separate my worth from my work became an ongoing challenge. As the months passed, my professional success continued to grow. I was promoted to an executive position with broader responsibilities and an even more substantial compensation package. The difference now was that I could enjoy this achievement for itself, rather than as validation of my value as a person. My mother's health stabilized, allowing us to enjoy quality time together, without the shadow of medical crises. She had always been my one consistent source of unconditional love, and strengthening our relationship became a priority. 1 year after the confrontation, Amber and I met for coffee, our first in-person meeting since that day in the attorney's office. She looked different somehow, less artificial and more grounded. "I am 6 months into my new job," she told me with genuine pride. "It is the longest I have ever stayed at one place." "That is fantastic," I replied, meaning it. "How does it feel?" "Hard sometimes," she admitted, "but good, like I am standing on my own feet for the first time." She shared that she had not spoken to our father in several months after realizing how toxic his influence had been. "He only valued me when I was an extension of him, or when I could get things for him," she explained. "My therapist helped me see that was not love." We did not become best friends overnight, but we began building something new, a relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation or exploitation. It was tentative and sometimes awkward, but it felt more authentic than anything we had shared since childhood. As for my father, I occasionally heard updates through mutual connections. He had moved to Arizona anyway, apparently supported by a new girlfriend. I felt nothing but indifference to this news, a significant change from the hurt and anger that had once dominated my feelings about him. The scholarship fund I established for students from single-parent homes became my way of transforming my difficult experiences into something positive. Each year, it provided financial support and mentoring to young people facing circumstances similar to what I had overcome. Looking back on that confrontation day, I realized it had been necessary not just to set boundaries with my father and sister, but to finally release myself from seeking validation from people who were incapable of providing it. I had learned that family is defined by consistent love and respect, not by blood or obligation. The most valuable lesson was understanding that standing up for yourself is not selfishness, it is self-respect. By refusing to be exploited by people who had contributed nothing to my success, I had honored not just my current self, but also the young girl who had worked so hard to create a better life. So, what do you think about my story? Have you ever had family members suddenly reappear in your life when you became successful? Drop a comment below about how you handled it. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to set boundaries even with family. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, you deserve respect regardless of your bank account balance.